England.
We've conquered all of Europe. We're never gonna stop. From Palestine to Turkey, we've won the fucking lot. The Patriot and the Shankly, the fields of Anfield gold. We are unsupported, and we come from Liverpool.
Well, guys, we're going to get straight stuck into Chelsea. Obviously, on the training ground, we usually preview the next game. We did do a preview of Chelsea last week, but for this one, because there is no match day on the weekend, international break, boring, we just thought we'd dedicate this whole training ground to the Chelsea result. And I think it's a good time to do a review training ground because the Chelsea game, there were parts of it that were good. I think before the game, a lot of people would have taken a draw, but because of the red card, I think it warrants a closer look, let's just say. I just want to remind everybody this is a pre-recorded show, as the training grounds usually are, because Pete and I have a lot of stuff to do. We get screenshots and we look at very, very in-depth stats. So this is something that we pre-record. Also, please like and subscribe. So this is Red Sea Podcast on the YouTube. We're going to be moving slowly over from Twitter. So I'm not sure yet if we're going to put this out on Twitter, but if we do, please make sure you go onto YouTube and subscribe to the page, put the notification bell on so you can start to see these shows more, and let us know what you think of the training ground first and foremost. And give it a like if you do like the video, because that pumps us up the YouTube algorithm, and then you can see more of our stuff more often. But having said that, let's get straight stuck into it, Pete. What we usually do on the training ground is we start off by looking at some detailed statistics. Pete has really great access, being the professional football coach he is a professional, by the way, gets paid for it. So more pro than you and me on our armchairs at home, the armchair experts. So we're going to have a look at those stats first, and then we're going to show you some screenshots from the game, and then use the tactics board just to show you what we thought of the Chelsea game and what maybe went, not maybe what went well, what went average, and then what didn't go so well. So without much further ado, let's get started on these stats, Pete. We took a look at these, you and I, before we started shooting. And there are a couple of interesting ones. Was there anything that you remember off the top of your head when we were looking through these beforehand?
I mean, the one right in front of us is blatant, like the expected goals. I mean, that's a interesting stat at the moment. And how everybody is kind of like, it's like the buzz stat, expected goals, to me, I don't know how you can expect goals, but at the end of the day, in front of us, what you're seeing there is we should have scored, 2.
2.5, nearly 3. I mean, it's almost 3. Like, round up.
and they could have, they got their 1, which is kind of as expected according to those statistics. But it goes to show that in a match that we should have won, we didn't. And it comes down to a few more stats that will come up a bit later on in terms of the lack of creativity in the final third.
Well, because it's an interesting thing, the way that this stat works. It's interesting because a lot of people said, oh, we should have won. And if you're a real optimist, glass half full, you kind of go, oh, well, I'll take the draw. And a lot of people who are really, really negative said we should have won. But I think they use the phrase we should have won to suggest, we were so bad that we didn't even have a chance of winning. What this stat here shows us here, as the expected goals just there, is that we actually should have scored 3 goals, but we didn't. We're expected to have scored that. So on another day, if Liverpool played the same way that they did on the weekend, maybe they win. I'm not saying it's certain, but that's something that Jurgen Klopp we're used to seeing him do this, where he kind of he puts the blueprint down, and if he has a chance of winning, then he's kind of happy with that, because more often than not, he's hoping that it works. It's kind of that whole thing, do your plan A better kind of thing. He will say it. He goes at the end of the game, he's quite calm. He's like, yeah, we could have won, but maybe just a bit unlucky. And that's probably what he means by unlucky. Maybe he sees the expected goals, Pete. That's the first thing he looks at after the game.
Well, finishes. I think that the expected goals come down to what? Possession throughout the game, chances created, maybe shots on goal, shots on target. And they kind of put that into a formula and correlate the fact that, according to these statistics, Liverpool should have scored, potentially 3 goals. I mean, that's great if you can score 3 against Chelsea. If you're creating that many opportunities to score, if you're going to score 3 against the best defensive side, going around at the moment in Europe, current European champions, hot form. I mean, that's actually, look, I said, it's a positive to take away. The negative is we actually only scored one, and one was a penalty.
So again, just to remind you guys, this is Liverpool's average opponents. This is their this is average Liverpool across a combination of this season and last season. This is their average opponent, so every single dickhead team that they've versed. But this is the weekend's game. This is Liverpool on the weekend, and this is Chelsea on the weekend. This is the 1-1 game. So just for those who need to see, and that's why we've got Liverpool and Chelsea on the side. Just something we looked at before the game, the whole idea of where are we losing the ball. I mean, historically, Liverpool like to lose the ball high, I guess, because they're running forward at goal. They like to counterattack, so to speak, and that was kind of like no different with the Chelsea game. They're not losing the ball at the back; they're losing it up front. Likewise, Chelsea are losing the ball at the back and not up front. So there's your high press from Liverpool, and Chelsea were a bit conservative, Pete.
Yeah, it goes back to the shape that they had to, go to after the red card, which was literally just sit 5 at the back and then, 4 in front of them or 3 in front of them, whatever it was.
And then recovering the ball, not just losing the ball, but recovering it. Chelsea, they don't recover it off our back 4, but we do. We recover it off their back 4 a lot. So we're kind of, we're winning the ball up high. It suggests that's that 30 number. But this was one thing I just wanted to see because, Pete, I don't know about you. I mean, we might talk about this more in detail, but, and I wanted to use some of the banners for this, but we'll just go through these stats and then maybe we'll have a look at, cementing some of our points from the weekend. But one of the things that I have said a lot is that even watching it live, it felt the 45th minute and the 65th minute felt like the last 5 minutes of a game. Not this game, but I remember being afraid at like 51. I was like, this is really good. Like we're playing so well, but what team plays this well against this Chelsea side or any good football side for 45 minutes? I mean, you can do it against a crap team, but Chelsea will figure out a way sooner or later. I felt like Liverpool threw the kitchen sink early. And maybe they ran out of gas. I'm not sure if that's, it looks like FIFA when we watch it on TV. It just looks like they can run for days, but they get tired like everybody else. But the thing that I noticed in the game, like not just that we were, pressing them hard, but all of our long range strikes that were of note felt like they came before the 70th minute at least. So I just want to look at this, is that on average, Liverpool shoot from outside the box only 5.5 times. In this game, we've got 9. So look, that could suggest that, obviously that pressure was telling, but it also suggests to me, Pete, that as Chelsea start to push further and further back, Liverpool's ideas were mostly from long range, which you and me are not against it. But if Liverpool are shooting more often than not, it means that they're running out of ideas.
I'll tell you why I loved it to start off with. And then I didn't realize how nothing else would eventuate after it. But for me, I loved it that I thought, because finally, let's face it, we've all been begging for seasons now for us to actually take shots from outside the box. I don't care who you are, what you've seen. You've all said it. We need a midfielder. We haven't had a midfielder since Steven Gerrard or Coutinho that could, shoot from distance and cause problems. And then what I saw, as you said, in that first, let's say 15, 20 minutes of that first half, when we were shooting from distance and the pressure was piling on, I was thinking, look at this. We're just bombarding them in every way possible. If it's outside the box, it's down the line, it's this, it's pressing. I thought if we score now, we'll probably score 4. I thought it'll be game, set, match within, by the 75th minute, we'll be smoking cigars. And then what started to happen was, after the shots, after that amount of pressure, after that whole thing, and like, oh man, they're gone. Then the ideas just stopped. It's like we ran out of ideas, not juice. George, I'm not gonna say you're wrong. I'm just thinking that it wasn't. We ran out of gas. I actually just think we ran out of ideas. And it's like, oh, that didn't work. That didn't work. Oh, that didn't work. What do we do now? And it just went flat really, really quickly.
Well, this is the other one that we had here that we actually really liked, and excuse our notes on the bottom. It reminds us of why this is significant as we're looking at it before the game. This is positional attacks with shots. So this is what you were saying, Pete. Do you want to very quickly describe positional attacks with shots? I think it's a pattern of play that is advanced that leads to a shot or a chance.
It's in possession after, I think they said 3 or 4 passes, I guess, in possession and trying to build up through the field to create a shot in possession. So not so much that it's not a set piece It's not off a quick counter attack. It's like I said, it's more so a composed positional play, a possessional play.
This is interesting. Against all our other sides, combination of all the sides, Liverpool on average like to have, this is the percentage I'm guessing. So what happens is we have 37 positional attacks on average, and we will have a shot every 9. We'll have 9 shots every 37 attacks, which is a conversion rate there of 24%. Against Chelsea, we had 51 positional attacks with 9 shots. We've got that's 7% of a deficit against 10 men. So like I've said here, that's more attacking patterns of play that were more useless.
Well, that goes back to what we just
hit our
saying.
average. Look at this. We've actually hit our average. We actually shot as many times as we always have, but we were running at them and trying to create stuff more often. So it's like we did more work and had less outcome.
Yeah, like I said, we just finished saying it was after that bombardment. It's like the fellas just ran out of ideas, and that's that. They pretty much kind of cements that idea. 51.
Yeah. Counterattacks with shots this is the one that we're looking at here. Whoopsie daisies. Counterattacks with shots. Where was it? Here it is. Counterattacks with shots. It's just gone down a bit. Excuse that. I like this. Look at that. 33%. Look at their counterattacks with shots here. 60 compared to 33%, Pete. I mean, yeah, they were scary on the counter. We weren't.
Yeah, well, like I said, toothless in our counterattacks this time around. It was a bit more slow, I guess. It was more predictable, as we have been for the past, while. But again, for someone to look more scary than you with a man down, yeah, I think it kind of it does kind of just explain the match in general. The statistics at the moment have been pretty much spot on from what we kind of
Isn't that
saw.
Isn't that incredible? Because look at this. This is the one that we actually looked at right before we started filming the show. Is that on average, Liverpool crossed the ball 20 times with a 29%. I'm guessing that's crosses and accurate crosses. Now, I mean, the accuracy seems to be better in this game, but on average, we only crossed the ball 20 times. Against Chelsea, we're crossing the ball 33 times. Now, the reason why this stat is important to me is you look at the very next stat, completed crosses from deep, and usually it's 5.5. We're now at 9. So what it tells me is that not only are we crossing more against Chelsea, but we're crossing from deep. Now, the reason we're crossing from deep is we cannot get past that back line, that back 5, and then that bank of 4, including Lukaku, that are just sitting in front. So what that tells me is that, I mean, if a team's crossing more, either they are, I mean, especially the team like Liverpool, that they do cross, but they are, it's a pattern of play. Going back to what we were saying before, we're not the type to try and hit a target man in the box, despite the fact that Jota is unbelievably good for a tradition. But this is what it is. It's more crosses in the game, and more of them are from deep.
That could also come down to, in which we're going to get to eventually with a couple of the screenshots we have. It's I not blame. I'm not going to say the word blame, but I look at the midfield and I think, well, that's because they didn't offer enough creativity, and the midfield was too predictable. So that whenever they get the ball, other than Harvey, an 18-year-old trying to take the game, I mean, if that's what we're relying on, I think we need to have a serious rethink of how we want to play with this midfield. But I think a lot of the crosses come from just get the ball to Trent and hope to God he can find someone. Because at the moment, Robertson couldn't even cross a bridge on the weekend. So let alone cross a ball. And it's something that like I said, the midfield needs to step up a lot more at the moment.
Well, this is something that maybe midfield should be able to help out with. But again, it's that front 3 that, I mean, I'm assuming this is what the front 3 should be doing for us more. Now, usually here, this is penalty area entries. These are the totals on here. These are your totals. These are your runs into the penalty box, and these are your crosses, right? So usually we're at a ratio of about 1-2, which means every time we make a run into the box, we're probably crossing the ball another 2 times. The problem against Chelsea is that we're running into the box the same amount as what we are in our average game. So against a 10-man side, we're running into the box the same amount. Now, law of averages suggests if you've got less players, you should be running into the box more. We just didn't get to do that. But look at that. There's that stat again with the crosses. it's about a 1-to-4 ratio there. So we're usually running into the box once and then we'll cross it twice. We'll take a run, we'll cross it twice. In this game, we're taking a run and then we're crossing 3 or 4 times, and then we'll take a run and then we're crossing 3 to 4 times. Again, the lack of ideas. I mean, where Liverpool are so devastating is when their front three are running at the defense inside the box, or at least someone breaking into the box. There was a lack of breaking into the penalty area against Chelsea.
And that's something that we've highlighted in previous shows. And I guess going back to the Burnley game, okay, we score from a cross, which Tsimikas cross with an unbelievable header from Jota. But then look at the second goal we scored, George. Mane's goal. How did he score that? It was a run into the central area of the box kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, it's two things.
Didn't see enough
exactly
of that.
It's a run into the box, but he's also closer, which is something I've just said here. You can see here, Mane and Salah sometimes just too wide.
Yeah, and it's something that I think we need to fix heading into Leeds, because, I mean, if there's any manager other than Rafa who's confident enough into nullifying teams through just analysis, it's Bielsa, who's quite obsessed with analysing the opposition. That's like one of his famous traits, not so much his football, but the fact that he's so obsessive with his analysis. So I think with someone like him, if we're not going to try and do something different, I think we're going to make his life so much easier until our next match.
And then this is, I guess this merges in with it, touches in the penalty area. Liverpool usually get 28 in a game. Now, to say 24 and 28 are close, it's still less than our average. We're underperforming there. But in the context of 10 men again, Pete, I mean, again, Chelsea, it just shows how much Chelsea dedicated themselves to the 5-man defense. It wasn't a 3-4, whatever it is, 3-4-3 that they usually play. That was a 5-man defense. And like we've seen with Atletico, like we've seen with, maybe even Manchester United, when you've got a decent team, we've even seen Arsenal, Arteta stifle Klopp before with the 5 in defense. When you've got good footballers that are nimble and quick, and you put them in defense and you put 5 of them there, it's going to be difficult to get into the penalty area. Against 10 men, Liverpool would be able to say to themselves, we did not get into the penalty box enough. And look at this. Chelsea did. Chelsea got into the box the same amount as all of our opponents usually do. And that was with 10 men. So it was just a little bit mismatched.
And again, like you touched on that, and we're not taking anything away from Chelsea the way they defended. We're not taking anything away from their desire to not lose. This is a Liverpool podcast, so we can only talk about Liverpool. I'm not going to sit here and talk about Chelsea and how they did it. But it's like, I just wish there was a bit more of a gamble in our attacking style of play, or just a small change in the areas that we've highlighted. That's all.
And then this is interesting, is that Chelsea never performed a slide tackle, Pete. I mean, a slide tackle, we've talked about this when we talked about Koulibaly, for example, when we talked about the transfer of Koulibaly, why we didn't mind him because he made a lot of tackles. But as Jamie Carragher and also the great Alan Hansen said, I never made a slide challenge because I was never out of position. A slide challenge is usually you're so far out of position that, and not to suggest, by the way, we've said Fabinho does a sliding challenge. If he's out of position, it means that we're getting countered against. The counter always happens because people are out of position. That's why it's called a counter attack, because it's happening quick. It's in reverse to what is happening, the reverse of your attack. But Chelsea were never stretched. They were never slipping and sliding. They were stood still like statues, Pete.
Yeah, they didn't have to look. I mean, they didn't have a slide tackle to make, not because we weren't getting it behind or whatever. It's because every time we crossed the ball, it was to their head. Every time that our wingers got the ball, they ran into the opposition anyway, so they didn't actually have to make a tackle. We actually made the tackle for them. I mean, we saw Mane. I think the stat is he lost the ball 31 times in the match, and I think a lot of out of those 31, I'm just going to take a random guess here. 22 were just running at the defender, like just straight at him, thinking he was going to disappear or whatever. And so I just felt like we made their life so much easier. And yes, they defended unbelievably well, but we made it a lot easier for them to defend.
And these are the last two that I just want to have a look at, is lateral passes that are accurate. Is that we made, on average, we passed the ball 254 times laterally, and then we've got a success rate of 91%. Now, our success rate is the same. I'm not looking at the success rate. I'm looking at that. Is that we're passing the ball 60 more times laterally. So laterally is side to side. So against 10 men, again, against a side, you've got more players than them. we're passing sideways more often than going forward. So it kind of shows you the problem in this game. And by the way, Pete, I think we're going to get onto this. I think Klopp just plain and simply planned for a match, a fight. And the red card actually hurts Liverpool, in my opinion, because it gives Chelsea, it gives them the game plan we're going to defend. Because Chelsea came to Anfield to try and get something. But
yeah,
it's like Liverpool kind of didn't prepare for this. They didn't prepare to try and break down the Great Wall of Chelsea.
Yeah, look, with the lateral passes, I kind of agree with you because I would love to have had more forward ones that break through the lines there. But look, it's something that Pep does, Guardiola that does with Manchester City a lot. He does try to pass the ball laterally to shift the opposition's block. Because when people play Manchester City, they play in a block. And he tries to move them from side to side and eventually try to hit them in between whilst they're still sliding across. So that could be something we try to do. Unfortunately, I don't agree with what I'm trying to defend Liverpool here with because we never saw a forward pass. Do you know what I mean? So it's like I'm counteracting my own kind of a point here, but we did try to do that to move them, but there was nothing to break them down with. That's what just frustrates me so much.
And then this is the last point I want to bring up because I want us to move on to the screenshots and then onto the tactics board. But just very quickly, when we're talking about, because we're going to talk about this later, the idea of breaking down the low block. We in our history with the LFC couch, by the way, we've studied this, and we may have to study it again because as we started talking about the low block, Pete, we ended up winning the league, and so we're like, we don't have to talk about this thing anymore because Liverpool know what to do. But it feels like Liverpool, I mean, they've shown signs in this match at the very least that are they forgetting that? Because Burnley, they do the low block, and we kind of figured it out against them. And that was our Achilles heel last season, was the dumb idiot teams coming at us with the low blocks and the counters and making a meal of us, so to speak. But one thing I've enjoyed about Liverpool, especially when they were successful in the European Cup run, in the run where we win the league, is that we utilize the long pass. Now, it can be controversial. I know sometimes you, Pete, you don't like how Henderson sometimes uses it aimlessly. I'm actually a fan of it because it just creates unsettlement. Remember, we had the theory of Jurgen Klopp sometimes loves to lose the ball so that he has a chance to win it back, and then the other team is kind of scrambling. I would have loved to see that against Chelsea more. Liverpool usually pass the ball long 55 times. They've done it here 46 times, and their percentage of accuracy is a lot lower. We saw Hendo do it to Mane against Spurs in the European Cup final. We win 2-0. That's the first goal. I mean, it actually wins the penalty rather. He doesn't score from it. Yeah. We saw Virgil van Dijk do it to Mane against Bayern Munich. We actually see, you're going to bring up a screenshot of Mo Salah being out of position because he should be wide. My argument when you bring up that is that he's trying to look for the ball over the top and it just never comes from Trent or Harvey Elliott because they're facing the wrong way. And then the question is here, why isn't it happening? Maybe it's because Sadio Mane isn't running anymore. And that's another whole conversation, by the way. But I'll leave the stats there for 1 second. Not for 1 second, for the rest of this. I think it's interesting to see that you can kind of see from the stats, Pete, you can see Liverpool struggling for ideas. And that's the theme of this training ground is Liverpool running out of ideas. And again, I would just put that down to it just seems like they didn't plan for that. I mean, it's like going into an exam and then, Mr. Bean has that exam where he goes in and it's trigonometry and he realized at the end he studied for the wrong test. I mean, if you don't, he's looking at the other person's, Liverpool were like Mr. Bean, looking around going I don't have the answers. It's the wrong tests. I'm in the wrong freaking exam.
It's been like that for a while, though, George. It's been like that for a while.
Yeah, I know, albeit from last season. So what we'll do now is we'll have a look at those screenshots. Pete, you know what your first screenshot is. Do you want to get us started on what we're going to expect to see, and then it'll show up for the people to see.
Yeah, so that's just the first one that I've sent you there. It's the one when Robertson gets the ball.
And just explain to us what's going on in that as I attempt to get this up with the technology.
Yeah, that's fine.
Go for it.
It's just loading up on my screen. There we go. Perfect. Got it. Yeah. So here, look, this is one of those moments that when we did start the first half well as the second half, and we started intense. And even Tuchel came out and said that the way Liverpool started the match, I thought it was never going to end. And that's a compliment to the way we had started so positive and on the front foot. What we have here is, the ball's already left his foot, but it's Robertson has the perfect chance just to clip it in behind Christensen there. Because if you have a look, Christensen's body, shoulders are facing forward. He's not even on the half turn. Rudiger's behind Salah already. So if Robertson plays the ball on the floor here, trying to split the two, and I'm thinking, why? Like, this is the perfect opportunity just to dink it over Christensen there and get Salah running there, because if it's in the air, the keeper has to make a decision. Does the keeper come out because it's in the air? And if so, obviously we know Salah's going to get the ball first. 100% Salah gets that ball first. Because look, Robertson, as poor as he played, Robertson can make that pass 9 out of 10 times. So and instead it's like a brain lapse, and he passes it on the floor instead. And for me, I know what you're going to bring up because it's 100% spot on. Mane, again, potentially you could just see him cut out there on the screen.
Yeah,
maybe you slip it in on the floor for Mane instead and get Mane running in there. But it's for me, it highlighted the game how going forward we just kerfuffled everything. I think that's the word I want to use, kerfuffled, because I don't want to swear too much.
Everything.
It was one of those ones I'm just thinking, that's a stock standard ball to clip in for Salah to run onto.
In this one, we've got Henderson in the LCM. A lot of people didn't like him in that position, and I think this game kind of showed why he's limited when he's not on the right-hand side.
Yeah, look, I wish that we could show videos because I think it will show the picture clearly. But what happens here, he receives the ball where he has a chance. Kante's not near him at the moment where he receives it. And instead of taking it, for example, with his left foot and potentially hitting Trent free on the other side, or playing one of the splitting passes through the middle to either Harvey or to whoever else is available, he takes a touch back. And when he takes that touch back, Kante's on it like white on rice, like he's all over him. And what happens here? He kicks it out and we lose the possession, or we get a throw in, but look where the throw in is. So it's coming there that we just thought that it's just those moments there that we kind of let ourselves down in going forward. Even though we're in our own, defensive third, we let ourselves down to go forward by going backwards.
Who's there last season? Who's in that position? Which midfielder?
That's Ronaldo.
Yeah, and how good is he turning out of danger? I mean, this is where you missed Van Alden. Just there is where you're missing Van Alden. And the thing is, if Henderson's on, let's just say Henderson's left-footed there, he can easily... He just first time goes out to his left foot and plays a nice curling ball like he does on the right down the line. And maybe it's Mane who anticipates that. By the way, how many times is Trent Alexander-Arnold in this position? He gets it out on his favored foot, and it's Salah who anticipates. Right here, no one knows what's going to happen. Rightly so, because Henderson doesn't usually play there, and Sadio Mane is not expecting anything from Henderson, and Mane really doesn't expect anything from anyone there because that's not really how it works down there. But on the other side of the field, I mean, Henderson even plays that ball into Salah on his right. If Henderson is in this position on the right-hand side, I'm assuming things are going a little bit better for him. But the other thing I wanted to point out here is we talked about this in the training ground, how Chelsea like to do this every so often. Look at this box. They have the front three pressing with one of their midfielders, which suggests there's a huge gap in here. We were saying this is where you're going to get your joy. If we have Wijnaldum here, and this is where maybe Naby Keita could have been of use here. If that's Naby Keita, if he just beats that press, and by the way, hardest person to beat in the press is Kante, one of the best defensive midfielding tacklers in the world, if not one, one of the best right now. I mean, if he's got Fabinho and that's it, there's no one else challenging him up there. But if he can turn out of danger just to here and play Firmino just there, they're finished. They're finished there because, I mean, they've got their fullbacks are high up here and there, and they've got hopefully three centre backs against Mane and Salah, which should be it should be a mismatch. But again, it kind of just didn't work out for us in this sense.
And look, we've got the timestamps. Don't forget, there's times there to people go back and have a look at these screenshots to kind of get what we're trying to say. Because here, this one, I don't know. And again, it feels like we're bashing Henderson. We're actually not bashing Henderson.
No, it's not. He's just not supposed to be playing there.
He just happens to be in this, positions now. But this one shits me the most because in this moment here, he receives a beautiful ball where he can go one-on-one on Christensen. And again, Christensen, for me, at the back three, out of the three of them that we're playing, he's the weakest one. And he's playing central. So here we have a moment where I felt like if it was Naby Keita, even Harvey Elliott on the left, I feel like he has the courage to go one-on-one here. Not even one-on-one, just take his first touch into the box because it's going to attack. It's going to favor the attacking player regardless because either here, penalty drags him down, or look at the other two. We've got Firmino and Salah running into the box there, 2v2 there. Obviously, the attackers have the advantage because they're running blindside or, the defender's actually running against their goal as anyone who's played football before knows, they hate defending their own goal when they're running towards it because anything can happen. But if we just see him here, take a touch forward, positive into the box and across, or positive and try to take him for a shot, because I back Henderson 1v1 there to shoot even and take him into the box and have a crack with the left foot or whatever it is. I back him. But it's like he does this stupid cutback to Mane, and then Mane does a shit cross and it just kills the attack.
He does a back heel. Is it a back heel that he does? He does like
It's
a
like
Ronaldo
a chop, like a Ronaldo. Yeah.
A
That
Ronaldo
kind of chop.
You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the number one. What do we watch when we're watching the inside training? For those who have the LFC Go horrible TV app, whatever it is, horrible app, where it never works. It doesn't work in Australia at certain times. We miss half the preseason because of it. Fix it, LFC. It's horrible. But anyway, we watched every single training ground. What do they always show us? They show us, what are they called? The rondo? Where you got
rondos,
two players
the
in the
shoot
middle.
rondos. Yeah.
Rondos, where it's always one touch and, quick. I mean, I'm sure they do more than rondos. And by the way, that's probably why they show us that, because it's useless and it doesn't show you anything about tactics. But Henderson here is doing a bit of a rondo job. It's like, because the rondo is, by the way, the rule is in rondo, one touch or two touch, right? You can't dribble with the ball because that's against the rules. I mean, Henderson here, mate, take 3 touches, take 4 touches, because if you take those touches, you're in the box, and then we get another one of our penalty box entries, which is what we need.
You know what? He can take 2 touches here. The first one's forward, the second one's to cross.
And if he's on his right-hand side, though, he'll do that, because he does Ronaldo chop with his right foot, ends up at Mane. If he's on the right-hand side again, I reckon he takes that one touch and he puts a lovely Henderson-style ball into the box. That's just me.
Yeah, like I said, we're not having a go at him. I just think, But this is what you're talking about, George. Maybe you want to take this one.
Well, the thing is that you're suggesting that here there's a little bit of mismatch of what's going on, and maybe that is new like settling in for Harvey Elliott or whatnot. But your suggestion here is that Salah should be wide, and I agree with you. But what I'm seeing from Salah here is that at 12, I mean, this is all happening within the first 12 minutes. I mean, Salah wants to get in behind, and he's not getting that service. And like I said, Henderson, Virgil van Dijk, we've got these players, and even Fabinho. We saw, I mean, I keep bringing this up. Well, is it Mane's first goal against Manchester United 3 years ago when we're at Anfield? They win 3-1. Mourinho gets sacked. It's Fabinho over the top to Mane, that back spinning, well-weighted pass into the box so that one of our quick strikers can beat that line. There is a perfect chance there for Salah to beat the line there. And by the way, look at Elliott. If that's Henderson, because Elliott's on his left foot, that's why he's traveling backwards. If that's Henderson on his right foot, it goes over the top, and it's
100%.
And it's straight to Salah over the top.
I agree with you 100%. But you know what he can even do, Elliott? 2 things for me that can happen here. If Salah is wide, Elliott threads that needle there, because it is a big enough gap to pass the ball through, especially someone of his quality. And if you're playing for Liverpool Football Club, you can make that pass. Then you've got Salah wide, 1v1 on Rudiger. And we saw
that's what you want it to happen.
I really want that 1v1 battle there. And if not, I would actually love to see Elliott pop into that space there and look at Fabinho can kind of receive that ball from Trent and maybe clip it for Elliott. So I feel like the midfield balance was wrong. And I feel like the midfield has been wrong for the 3 games so far, Norwich, Burnley, and this game. Not for the fact that they're players, but I just feel like the dynamic between the midfield has been weird. Do you know what I mean? And that's for me, that's another example of this game where Henderson is making mistakes he normally wouldn't. He's Mr. Reliable. And, Elliott, and you can't say anything about Elliott, man. 18 years old, like he's bound to be a star. So we give him the time,
Absolutely. This is another one that you picked out. Liverpool, very defensive here.
I just put this in there because you know what? I've never seen all 11 players this close together, ever. In the Liverpool side, because at the end of the day, we win the ball here. How do we counterattack?
Yeah.
We don't.
Kind of like a corner.
Because
we're hoping it's kind of like a corner.
We're all there. Literally, like, so let's pretend Trent, let's pretend Trent receives the ball there at his feet. Who does he play to? And how do we get forward from there?
True.
So that's something that I saw that I thought, wow, we really did kind of take them over. Like, we really took them serious because we never see that. Yeah, and mind you, there's 2 versus 5 just in the box there.
I know. Were they that scared of Lukaku?
Yeah. So do you know what I mean? So like it's. I think Reece James being free at the back post is probably the most dangerous one there, because I think Jorginho he's covered.
He scores from there against Arsenal.
Well, close enough. Yeah, he does. He gets that space there, and maybe Kante. But then again, if Henderson will grab him, like, so there's no real threat there. Yet we're all there. So it's just, I just found that interesting. But this one shit me the most, because I guarantee if it was Tsimikas, he would have copped an earful. But if you have a look here, the picture, the goal we conceded, it's Robertson checking. He's having a look. He scanned. And Fabinho, I think that's Mane and Trent there. Their job is to block the runners. They're not there to track the runners. They're to block the runners because it's a zonal corner. And zonal was all about having your area. If it was man versus man, I'd blame, potentially Fabinho for the free header. But between Elliott, Robbo, and Henderson all at the front post, one of them has to attack that ball. And I don't care what you say. Like that one of them has to attack the ball there. And I point the finger at Robertson a little bit more than any one of them because it's in his zone. It's in his area of attack. And not to mention, he's got his eyes on one of the runners.
Yeah, he checks.
So
he does a little side check.
So
and there's the other thing that you mentioned. Sorry, go on.
No, you're going to bring it up, so take over.
Well, I'm assuming you're going to bring up why don't Liverpool have a man on the post?
Because Henderson's front post, right? And we don't have a player at the back post. But yet again,
never have, never will. That's the problem. We had this conversation off air. I don't think Jurgen Klopp's never done it. I don't know why personally, but I mean, it's like we call it park soccer. I mean, it's a horrible word. No one will use soccer, but they call that in Australia and back in the 90s kind of thing where, you call it Sunday League in the UK, but it's that idea of like, dumb shit players do this, put a man on the front, put a man on the back, and that's it, that's how they defend the corner. But having said that, if the player's there, we don't concede. But Jurgen Klopp's never put a player there. And I think this is the reason why, is because we're zonal here. We screen there. So we're it looks like we don't all stand in here. It's kind of like zonal pickup because it's literally man for man, like you said. So they're picking up, but this is zonal. They're going to stand there no matter what the game is, no matter who's there. Obviously Elliott's here, but I think the reason why we don't have the player on the post is so they can do this so that we can break the way that, because I guarantee you when that ball comes in, Mane's first thought is to leave. Remember, we used to get, there was a bit of criticism on Liverpool as well when we were conceding some goals from set pieces because we were so, I think in the Emre Can days all the way back with Klopp, because we were so much more focused on breaking than we are defending it. Yeah. So maybe that's a sacrifice. We don't have the player on the post because we do want to break so quickly, but it's very simple. Player on the post, we don't concede.
Well, because in my opinion, again, it's done now, but Henderson doesn't need to be there because Robertson's there, or Elliott doesn't need to be there because Henderson and Robbo are there.
Yeah, Robertson's in no man's land. Robertson could be on the far post.
Yeah, we've got too many players at that front area, and out of the three, then one gets near the ball. And then, look, the header, ask him to do that another 10 times, I dare you. There's no chance he does that again.
Completely. But by the way, you know what's also happening? Because Alisson gets concedes from this. Why is there not? So there's two things. Actually, I said the park soccer, like Sunday League, dumb idiots do this. Like, put a man on the front, man on the back, no one on the keeper. They say that bullshit. It's like your big fat 45-year-old defender who like goes up and like pushes the striker off the goalkeeper. Just here, why does that always happen to us? Alisson has been bullied since day one, since he's been in the Premier League, and it's never been addressed. They must look at that and go, we're happy with this. We're just so happy. I just, because his first touch here, Alisson, is to push Lukaku away from him. Rather than, kind of positioning himself for a possible header. He's always got to deal with some strike. He's actually got two. He's got two players on him.
Yeah. I don't agree with what I read, but I remember reading somewhere saying that the ball was going near post. There's no reason for Alisson to be so far off his line. And I guess if you've got to watch the goal back to kind of make your own judgment on that. But I don't know, maybe as the ball comes in, he realizes it's going near post, maybe drop back on your line and you can kind of, because he gets chipped from front post, so again, it's a fluke header, but this is where we were talking about earlier. And if you want, I can go back to, because we're going to see this picture now. If you want to go to the tactics board, George, where we can talk about something a bit more,
absolutely.
Different.
Yeah. So let us know what's going on this time.
Yeah. Let me just get this up. Yep. Can you see that picture now?
Yeah. It's up.
Okay, so let's get that up here. So this is kind of like that picture there, and we're going to see this picture again, and we see it pretty much the whole second half. But this is what I'd love to see a bit more in these kind of situations is not so much him again. It looks like we're picking on Henderson, my God. But in this moment here, these guys are just trying to block. They're just trying to block and force it wide for a cross, yeah? I would love just to see someone with the ball and just carry it a little bit, even if it's just an extra 3 meters, to maybe pop Silva out or to ask one of these, do I come close? Or even this to try come in and close. Then does Elliot pop out here a little bit? It's just a bit of movement. But what we end up seeing too much of, and again, it frustrates me because we're a much more creative side than what we show. It goes from here to here to here. And then from here, it's just like a hopeful something. And then it ends up being nothing. I'd love to, even if it comes out to Fabinho and get Fabinho to drive, it's still 2 versus 1 here. We're okay. We're okay. Especially these two on Lukaku. We're definitely okay there. But I would just love is something from midfield where we carry the ball into these areas and then ask defenders to move out of their position. And that's something that we kind of see in that picture that you've got, and we end up seeing a little bit more of. But what we end up seeing is Robertson a little bit here, Mane stretched out there, Jota in no man's, well, not no man's there, but he's somewhere in between 3 defenders.
Well, what's happening? What happens actually is that Sadio Mane is where Jota is, and Jota is where Sadio Mane is. So they're actually switched in that in your
screenshot. Yeah. So it's a bit like that, and it's like, well, if you get these all a bit more closer, which I'm sure you're going to bring up later on, even if Elliot gets a little bit higher in there, and if he drives in and no one goes for him, great, he can have a shot or something can happen. But even if he just moves Jorginho for the slightest bit, then Elliot can kind of come out and get the ball. And then all of a sudden here we can hopefully maybe move Salah in there, or Christensen comes out. Then it's the Mane one.
Yeah, you know what it is. You've actually gone ahead. So there were 2 screenshots of that happening. The first one you just showed was Henderson doing it with Mane and Jota. Now move Mane and Jota back again towards each other. I mean, switch them again. And actually, if you look at the screen now, Pete, I've just switched them over. This is the same incident happens. Midfield drive, something different. But what we're seeing here is now 72nd minute. Look at our front 3. Look at it. Can you see our screen now, Pete? You've got here. So this is the thing I wanted to bring up literally. So we might have some more photos back there. We don't actually have to. We don't even need to use them. If we go back to your tactics board here, like what we were saying, the first 20 minutes of the half felt like the last 5 minutes of the game. It felt like we were throwing the kitchen sink. And the only thing I was worried about with that is, I mean, we had Virgil van Dijk long shot. We had Henderson from, this little area here where he just curls it round. I thought it was going to be like Chelsea last year. Not last year, a few years ago, where Henderson hits that Chelsea bomb, or he hits the bomb against Manchester City, doesn't he? I thought that's what we're going to see again, but who cares? It didn't happen, but we're trying. Fabinho has a shot from here. I think Harvey Elliott has. It looked like it was going to happen, but then the 65th minute happened, and that's what you notice here, 72nd minute. And one thing I said to you is, and by the way, I'm glad you've got this shot, because it's really funny, because we have a similar screenshot, I think, of later on in the game when we were doing well, and we actually saw it there with the previous shot, because this one is kind of in that 62 to 65 minute area. You actually see the front 3 kind of close, as you can see on the screen here. It's almost like there's a moment in the game where they just kind of run out of ideas. Even though you are saying we want to see something different from Henderson here, the front 3 are kind of thinking maybe we can get in on the act. But here on the 72nd minute, are they getting tired? They're so stretched. Mane, Jota, and funnily enough, you said this in the pre-thing, we can't even get Salah in the shot. He's that far away.
Yeah. And again, Salah's not going to expect the ball over the top, because guess what? You're too deep into their half to try and get something over the top to run onto. That's just, that's what I'm saying. There needs to be something different there where you carry the ball forward. And this is what you were talking about before Van Dijk had his shot. This is like when we were playing like it was the last 5 minutes of the game. And by the way, when it was the last 5 minutes of the game, it was crap. We didn't have this extra level to go to. It's kind of like, it's you ever play like Mario Kart where you use your mushroom boost. You want to use it at the final stretch so you can beat all the people. If you've used it at the beginning of the match, of the race, you've got no boost left. It's kind of like we didn't use our boost properly. But here, 51st minute, I love the shot from Van Dijk. A lot of people in our group said it looked like it was going to be a Daniel Agger, where it was that out-swinging centre-back style shot. But look at this, Sadio Mane, Mo Salah, and Jota. Now, they don't get the ball. They don't contribute here. But what happens is that Jorginho, who's usually so close to action, he's just kind of going, what are they doing? He's a bit further back. We've got here, is that Kovacic there? Yeah.
Who is that? Kovacic. I didn't know he played. He came on for Kante. That's right. He
came on. Yeah.
So we've got these players. They're just scared, Pete. They're scared. And that's what I just want to see. And I want to actually go back into here because I want this to be a little thing. Front 3, too isolated from each other. for F's sake. I mean, just put them close together. The centre-back's going, you got him, if you got him. When they're wide, it's easy. You take Mane, I'll take Jota, you take Salah. Even if Salah and Jota switch, they're just going to, play Salah up front for a little bit. Play Mane on the right because he's not doing anything on the left. We just need something different there. But at the very least, when we're seeing here, actually, if I go to another shot here, this is Fabinho's shot, by the way. Look at Mane, look at Jota, and look at Salah. 58 minutes, no surprises. The front three are kind of, they're holding each other's string again. Their little string that they hold so they don't, it's like when you're on an excursion.
Because of that, George, but because of that, it keeps actually Trent's free because of that.
Trent's free now. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. And he's actually running. He was probably hoping for the ball there. But there's all sorts of options here. Salah, I love, when Salah scores a goal, he goes here. I always say, someone like a psychologist needs to get into his head and just like every 10 minutes in the game, you just scored, bro. And then he becomes Messi for like 5-10 minutes where he starts asking for the ball. He's playing wall passes. He's going center forward. But when he's isolated and out of the game, does Klopp tell him stay literally on the wing? It has to be instruction. He's not a dumb player. This is we're talking about golden boot contender for 5 seasons in a row, 4 to 5 seasons in a row. I mean, he's a smart footballer. I don't understand why he's not central more than what he is. But there you go. There's our front three on a string together.
But what annoys me the most with that is when people play 5 at the back and you're the isolated winger, it's 2 versus 1 against you because you have the closest centre back and the wing back that comes back into the position. So you're already down like by an extra player. So you need help. And how do you create help? Well, you know what? Run centrally and connect with Harvey, with Jota, with whoever else is there. And that's something that we need to see more of, especially now, like, because teams are starting to realize that, we're getting a little bit too predictable. We are.
Well, what I want to do is very quickly is I'm just going to, if you give me access to your little board there, because we're just wrapping up towards the end here, but we've kind of showed you the screenshots that we enjoyed from the game that made the game kind of, I don't know, it explained the way in which it was heading. Let's just say, which is the idea of what is it? It's going to be a draw for Liverpool. I mean, it's kind of like 45 to 65. We're kind of like, oh my God. I mean, you even said it. Could this be 4? Could this be 5? But after 65, it's kind of like, I think this is going to be a draw.
What happened?
But it's just this idea that I just want to bring up very quickly because this is something I wanted to bring up. It's just down the bottom there. Is this the perfect warm-up for Atletico Madrid? Now, we're in a bit of a group of death. So we can't just sit there in like last season or the season before and say, look, if we beat Atletico, that's fine, or we can afford to draw against them. That's a tough group. Atletico, we need to win one of those games against them. We can draw both of them if we want to, but we need to beat this style of approach to us because before we know it, really good teams are going to be setting up just like Chelsea did. And by the way, Tuchel's just seen what he did there. I reckon that second half is his warm-up for how he's going to approach Liverpool next time, even if it is at home. I think Tuchel's going, why would I bother like risking myself on the break? Like that worked for 45 minutes. That worked. And if he had an extra attacker, that worked. He just has to sit back and just do what the Groks do, like Allardyce. Let's just play for 0-0 until 85 minutes and then scare them, But this is what I want to bring up. And maybe, I'm not sure if you want to go to the tactics board on this, Pete, but like
it's
I
up.
said,
I've got it up for you there.
Yeah. What do we do to break down the low block? Maybe we can think of like 1 or 2 things that we can do. And I think you've touched on it here. And I would argue the 2 things that I would do personally is I want our attackers closer together. Maybe Salah central, Mane out wide, because Mane is he's running out of ideas on that left-hand side. He keeps cutting in. If he's out on the right-hand side, because Mane's got a great left foot. If he cuts in on his left, he can shoot. Salah doesn't do anything on his right foot. So like you said, it's just basically all left, all left, all left. On the right-hand side, if Mane goes on his right, he crosses it in. If he goes on his left, remember Arsenal, his debut, he scores top corner. We've seen him do it before. So something like that. But the other thing that you suggested, so you've said 2 things. The other one is breaking like someone from midfield, maybe doing something. I don't know if it's a Thiago earlier on or maybe even a Naby Keita.
That's crazy how Thiago didn't play more minutes because if you want to talk about progressive passes, there's your man. Do you know what I mean? Like if you want to talk about passes, forward and precise and pinpoint. And we saw that pass that he made to Robertson over the top there, that little scoop that kind of Robbo stuffed up a bit there, instead of getting it in. He is that kind of difference maker. But then again, we spoke about Tsimikas getting, screwed over because he played well and, 2 games, what does it say? But at the same time, and I can't believe I'm defending him, but Naby Keita, what does that say? Because he is that player who's actually, one thing we can all agree with is he's actually got a really good dribbling ability. Yeah. And that's something that we needed in this match. We needed someone that can dribble the ball forward and ask questions of the centre-backs and say, do you want to come to me or do you want to stay on Mane, for example? Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, it's something that the match was screaming for change in midfield, and yet it didn't come. It just didn't come. I would have sacrificed Fabinho, for example, put Henderson as the DM because, we didn't really need that defensive cover because we were already a man up, and Van Dijk was absolutely bullying Lukaku. So I just think that midfield, again, the substitutions, the idea we lack of, it's something that we really need to hopefully sort out over this international break, and because Leeds are going to offer a very similar problem.
Well, this is that idea that you're talking about as well. Like, this is the only thing that I'm saying is that if you've got your front three kind of, in this area here, I can't really reach that circle, but if you kind of got your front three in this area there,
Let me move that for you. Give me a second. There you go.
Yeah.
I think that's
nice.
Sorry, mate.
That's okay. So the idea is that if you, I've lost that now. But regardless of that, if you do have your front three in that area, the idea is that it just brings all those centre backs into that area, and then Alonso's kind of thinking, I mean, am I going to be doing, am I the one that kind of has to come in? And then there's that area for our breaking midfielders. Maybe it is a Henderson that can kind of, go into that area, or maybe it is a Harvey Elliott or a Trent Alexander-Arnold that can go into that area. But I mean, what I even saw a lot of in the matches, by the way, is I did see also like Alonso kind of thinking about this, like if when Salah did go in the middle, but when Salah was out here, it's kind of it's very easy. They can afford to just be sitting there in their block of 5, and there's no thought process that's necessary. You know what I mean? Like, and then Mane obviously was always out on the wing there. It's just, look at that. Look at Jota on his own. That's kind of what we saw a lot of on the weekend. And if it were me, the first thing I would do to break down that what would you call it? A low block like this is I would, I'd bring those forwards closer together. Personally.
Yeah, and that could be, and when they're not closer together, what that does, it does create the spaces like, you highlighted before in the middle here and here. And that's something that if they are going to be wider stubbornly, then one of these guys have to do more in terms of, they have to do more in just getting here and carrying the ball into these kind of areas and trying to ask questions of these people. It's something that you can always mark a player, but you can never mark space. So it's something that we either got to carry the ball into the space or run into spaces, because just Salah sitting here for something over the top it works every now and then on a counter attack. But when we're not countering the ball and when we have, a build-up of possession, people set up, and all of a sudden that space in behind for Salah is no longer existent. And that's something that we need to, like, again, plan A, stronger, I get it, blah, 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 but maybe add to your plan A. Call it a plan A 0.1. Like, it's something that we need to do something a bit different with the front three and midfield.
Yeah, so it's runners from midfield and just getting that. I mean, another thing is the 4-2-3-1 suggests that, by the way, if I was to go back into that, this is something that we've kind of seen with Harvey a little bit, by the way. But this is what a 4-2-3 would look like. This is what I want to do, by the way. I would want Salah central. I'd want Jota left, and I'd want Mane right. And I'd want them real narrow. And then I'd want Harvey Elliott in this area here. And then it kind of allows you to do, because the argument is that Van Dijk, especially against like Chelsea with 10 played like a Burnley with 11, let's face it. So when you've got these low blocks, it's kind of like, Van Dijk can be your playmaker. Like, I would even argue Fabinho here doesn't need to be on the pitch, either one of Fabinho or Thiago. It can kind of be, I mean, how do we bring on? There he is. You can kind of afford to sacrifice Fabinho, or you can sacrifice Henderson there and bring on Fabinho there. It doesn't matter. Like, Van Dijk is your playmaker from back there. He was kind of acting like a Fabinho. So what you got here is that with your front three close together, Salah as your strikers, he holds the ball up really, really well. Jota making his runs in here. Mane has the opportunity to get to the byline like that. Elliott waiting on in the wings here kind of maybe has an opportunity to do that curling pass, whatever it is. If it's not Harvey Elliott, then maybe it's, I mean, now we don't really have that player. It would have had to have been Bobby Firmino, but we don't have him anymore. But who knows? It could even be a Naby Keita in that little area. It could also be Jota in this area. And then you could have Harvey Elliott up front, perhaps, in the front three. But whatever it is, this idea, so you have Harvey Elliott maybe even playing on the left. He can provide like a left wing cross. Remember, it's Xherdan Shaqiri playing on the left that provides the header for the cross for the header for Wijnaldum against Barcelona. So maybe it's a different, again, something different on the left-hand side. Whatever it is, just a reshuffling. Surely they do it in training where they can reshuffle that front four or that front three. And then, just creating some nonsense in and around this area. This is the area that I want nonsense, Pete. I'll show you. Is this going to let me do a circle? A square, fuck it. I want nonsense there. And against Chelsea, I just thought there was no nonsense there. And if there's no nonsense, that's why they call it no nonsense defending.
But it was also the fact that it was George, you got to click out. You did it again. You got to click out of that. So give us a quick sec.
Yeah.
There we go. Perfect. Yeah. Sorry. It's one of those things that we just got to do more of in terms of risk taking. It's just got to be. We just got to take more risks. It's something that I get it. We're rigid. We got our style, but sometimes we have to evolve. It's like it's like Pokemon. We need to level up. We need to evolve, and we need to become another beast in order to challenge and to stay on top and to challenge for the title, George, because it's not going to be easy this year. The way teams have strengthened over the past 2 or 3 years, and we haven't. And it's something that everyone talks about a Gini Wijnaldum replacement, but it's not so much a replacement of player. But you're talking about Wijnaldum, who can play 40 games a year. That's what we haven't replaced. We haven't replaced someone that can play 40 games in a year. Because our team, have a look at him. Other than Salah, who can play 40 games in a year?
Yeah. I mean, Mane can, but we don't want him to at this stage.
Our goalkeeper is injury prone. Who the fuck has an injury prone goalkeeper? So it's something that it's just one of them ones that so it's something that I feel like, again, I'm not going to get into that now because the transfer window's open. We didn't expect to sign anyone, move on. But it's just thought that we kind of, I feel like we missed something there in terms of helping us get better at going forward.
Yeah. Well, guys, that's been the training ground for this Chelsea review. I mean, there was a lot to break down, a lot to look at from that game. I mean, like I said, at the end of the day, 1-1, we kind of just take it and we move on. I do honestly think that Liverpool are a better side this season. We've obviously got better players in the team, and it just shows the confidence that we have in the side that the main order of business for the transfer window has been renewing all these contracts. So we renew these contracts. It gives them future value. If anyone wants one of these players, we don't lose them like we do with Gini Wijnaldum. And, it means that in future transfer windows, when we do bring in, for example, an Mbappe, like Salah can't sit there and say, can you give me more money? It's just kind of like, we've given you more money already if Salah ever does sign this contract. So it's a good thing to get these contracts sorted early. My hope is that it is preparing for a Haaland or an Mbappe, maybe some big signing, because Liverpool have now done this. This is the 3rd season in a row now that we've been banking. It's kind of like in The Weakest Link where they say bank and they keep banking their money, Eventually, someone's got to win the pot. So we've got to spend that money on somebody, and hopefully that comes soon. But it was Liverpool 1, Chelsea 1. This has been the training ground. By the way, always as always, like and subscribe to the Red Sea podcast on YouTube. You can see our little, or maybe you can't, but we are the Red Sea, at Red Sea Down Under on Twitter. So please make sure that you interact with us. We're going to have some more shows during the week. But for now, I've been George, and that's been Pete. And this has been the training ground. See you guys later.